Hey everyone, welcome to the Executive Edge podcast. I'm Jemai Canley, founder of Potential Unleashed Consulting. I sit down with founders, executives, and high performers to unpack what really gives leaders their executive edge. In a world where everyone has access to the same tools and information, what actually separates the exceptional from the average? Hey, welcome to today's episode. I'm so happy to be here with Laura. Laura, thank you and welcome to the Executive Edge.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, really excited for our conversation today. Those of you who don't know this, but Laura and I tried this about a week or two ago, and technology glitches got in the way, but Laura agreed to come back, and she's with us today to dive into these really important conversations. So today, Laura, the first question I would like to start off is, what should leaders be thinking about today to really help them sharpen their leadership edge?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I think about our leaders and when we think about, those that we want are high potential that can be really great leaders, there's a couple of really key competencies that surface. One is, do they really understand our business? And it doesn't
Mm,
matter, what part of the organization you're in. For us, HR, that's just as important as any other operational is. So really get to understand the business. The next is a really collaborative leadership competency because we no longer in an organization can be in our silos
yeah,
because there's so much interdependencies from what I do, how it impacts somebody else, and then what they do, how it impacts what I need to accomplish or things. So what we've found is getting to know the business and really understand it, even outside of your own area, collaboration across the business. And also it's not just, talking and having conversations, but making sure you're intentional about communication and making sure that you're talking to others about what you're working on and the impact that goes across, and having those collaborative meetings where you're inviting other people outside of your team into the meeting. So collaboration's another one. And then I think is continue the thirst for knowledge and learning.
mm, yeah,
It never stops. I always tell leaders that you never stop being, you never get to a point where you're a great leader. You never arrive at there.
yeah, yeah.
It's always, you're always having to relearn things or do things new or different challenges that are coming up. So you never arrive. So keep that thirst of learning and becoming a better leader.
I love that thirst of learning to become a better leader. I love that, and I wish someone would have told me that when I first started off because I thought one day I'm going to be a great leader. I will arrive at that destination, and like you said, it is constant evolution. And so I really appreciate you naming that. Laura, just from there's several things that I want to jump into. I know there's some other questions that I'm going to get to, but just off of that, things that sparked up for me was you talked about collaboration, but one of the things I also heard in that was you talked about not just what we communicate, but the impact.
Mhm.
Yeah, would you mind just talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think there again, it goes back to intentional communication, really
Yeah.
thinking about, who's your stakeholders or who could be your stakeholders and what am I doing impacting them. So I think it's when you think about communicating, yeah, there's informal communication and formal communication, which are both very important, but it's thinking differently about communication and then how are you communicating it and how often are you communicating? What are the best modes of communication? And how does somebody like to be communicated to? And
Yeah.
so I think, when we think about intentional communication, it's all of that wrapped together now and really collaborating, across the different departments and being intentional about it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. I think that's so important for so many different reasons. I've worked with a lot of leaders who, you know, as you mentioned, there's so many different communication styles. And sometimes I've worked with leaders who have their preferred communication style, but that is not the most effective communication style for those who they're trying to communicate with. So I really appreciate you naming that and just sharing that with folks because here's the thing that I think is important for everyone to understand. You're not locked into just one communication style, even though I have a direct my preference is direct communication. That is how I like to communicate. And I realized that that does not work for everyone on my team. And so if you send me a 2 paragraph text message, I will probably respond back with 1 word. Because that's the way my mind normally works. But again, I've needed to learn that that type of communication is not effective for everyone. And so,
Yeah.
it might start with some pleasantries. Hey, thank you so much for the text message, Laura. Right. And, you know,
Yeah.
and to answer your question, no. Right.
And there's something else that I've learned personally is when you think about communication, is what does that person want to hear and understand? For me,
Mm,
I'm just jump from here to there. And unfortunately, sometimes I do that with my team.
yeah.
I already know the end goal or where I want to end up, put it that way.
Yeah.
But they don't always, they're not in my mind, and so they're great performers, but sometimes they're like, hold on, let's talk about what are some of those milestones that we want to do and what are some of those things we need to get done to get us there. And I think that's been an important lesson for me is, make sure that you're bringing everybody along. And
Yeah.
just because it's in my mind or my head doesn't mean that everybody understands, where we're going or what we need to accomplish or things like that. So I think that's another important learning.
Oh, so true. So true. Yeah. Thank you for that. I have found myself at times leading and turned around and looked and no one is behind me because no one knew where we were going and no one knew exactly how to get there. I had it all in my mind, but again,
Absolutely.
yeah, love
Absolutely.
that. Well, Lord,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and sometimes people are I don't want to say they're scared to ask, but they're reserved to say, well, can you clarify that for a little bit, or can you clarify that? So, I think as a leader, you really, like you talked about, have to have some different styles, and it's up to us to accommodate the different styles. It's not up for them to accommodate our style only.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. One of the things that when I was learning more about you and the organization and the work that you've all done that I found extremely interesting is the program that you have designed and built. And I'll just share briefly why I found that so interesting and why I would love for you to share more about that is because so often when we work with organizations or we're working with different leaders, we find that leaders sometimes get promoted just based off of a skill set. And that skill set is not leadership. The skill set is Jamad sure is a really good paper folder. Let's promote him into supervisor or manager of paper folders. And then, right, I haven't learned the communication skills that we just talked about. I haven't learned some of the other things, how to inspire people and all those other things, how to even train people sometimes. And so when I came across this and I saw that you had actually designed and built this program, this Lead to Succeed program, I, I would love if you would just share more about where that idea came from, what it consists of, because I think other leaders can hear this and start to think about where might there be an opportunity inside their own organization to develop something similar.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm super excited about the program. We call it Lead to Succeed, and it's really not a program; it's really journeys, and that's how we
Mm,
refer to them, is journeys in leadership.
yeah,
And you're right; it doesn't matter what company you're in, or you come from, or you work for. We all have seen where people have been really good at their job as individual contributors, and oh yep, you're going to be the manager now of the department, and
yeah,
we're not giving them the right tools and resources. I don't know if it's through osmosis, they lay their head down on their pillow and we expect them to be the leaders, that we expect, a leader to be. But anyway, so coming into the organization, there were a couple of key things. Is one is we really didn't have real formal defined leadership. One is leadership competencies.
mm,
So what are those leadership competencies? And they do vary by different levels of leadership. And so one of the first things I did, and I don't know if this was in your notes, is developed an internal competency model. So we went and talked to the different leaders. We did some analysis. We did some correlation studies and say, okay, these are the 36 competencies that we see that are important across our organization. And there's lots of competency models you can go out and buy and things like this, but we thought it was important to do our internal competency model. And from that, I said, okay, we really don't have any formal leadership, preparation or even where they're at today. So we got together and said, okay, let's form what we call Lead to Succeed. And Lead to Succeed is really 4 leadership journeys. It is the emerging leader. So those that are individual contributors today that
Hmm.
have either interest or that we've seen that they have high potential, and we went through and say what would be the core competencies of somebody coming into a leadership role. What are those 6 to 8 core competencies? And we use competencies all the time, and we use different ones, but these are really core ones that we can say we can start developing those that want to be leaders. So we identified 8 of them. We put curriculum around. That's the first one. The next is called high impact leader.
Hmm.
And those are that have been in role or newer in role to lead. But it's now saying, okay, we've given you some core competencies, but what are the next ones to start being even a more effective leader? And those are usually having a team underneath them, and they're responsible for that area. The next journey is called strategic leadership.
Hmm.
And that's where we're saying, okay, these leaders now are more leading. It could be a department area where they have different managers reporting to them. That's a very different leadership style
It
than you
is.
having, your direct team, and you have a little bit, I'm going to say a little bit more leadership control over that. But when you become more of a department manager and you have multiple managers, that's then we're saying, okay, at that point you need these type of competencies. So
Yeah.
we've developed the strategic impact leadership journey. And then the fourth one is the executive leadership journey. So those that are directors and officers in our company, we're saying, okay, these are the things that we expect at this level. And so we developed those 4 journeys. We call them journeys because they don't stop.
Yeah.
It's not like we provide you, oh, this type of development and this type of development, and okay, boom, you're done.
Now you're there.
It's a journey that continues year after year, and it's in very thin. It's very different things. We also in the journeys we've developed mentor programs too, where the strategic leadership will now mentor the emerging one. The executive will now mentor the high impact. And so for lots of great reasons. One is there's a lot of good learnings, but it's also for the different leaders to get to know the talent that's really coming up. And how do we really help, support them on their journey of being a leader? And like you said, it just doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah.
We as a I always say kind of development's kind of three-legged stool. One is the employee has to have interest. They're saying, yeah, I'm very interested in being developed and being a more effective leader. But the company has to provide the resources and the tools to help them, and then their manager has to be involved too and to support it. So with that, we're kind of addressing all 3 of those things in our
Yeah.
Lead to Succeed journeys.
Yeah. Wow. I love that on so many different levels. One, Laura, I mean, what I'm hearing in that, which I really appreciate, and I mean, deeply appreciate, is the fact that it's not just one leadership journey that you created. Because as you were speaking, I was clearly seeing, yeah, those are very different environments, right? That a person's working in. Those require different competencies, different skill sets. Yes, some of them will be transferable, but the job is different. And you naming that, I mean, gosh, it just made me think on so many different levels because a lot of times there's a leader will pick up a book. There's good leadership books out there, right? But they're often not customized for those different journeys that you just mentioned. So you can pick up and I have tons, tons of books
We all
behind me on
do.
the shelf and everything else, right? And like you can pick up a book and you'll be able to pull some things out of it. But I love the fact that those journeys are so specialized and customized for where a person is in that moment or where they're going for that next step. Because again, as you were saying that, I'm just clearly thinking like, yeah, that is. And I'm thinking about some of my own bumps on my head
Mhm.
when I moved from this to the next, right? Because, oh, this is going to require a different set of skills.
Yeah.
but I thought I had them all because back then, again, I thought I was a great leader, right? I thought I had arrived, Laura. I thought I've got all the skills. And so it doesn't matter that now I'm
Well,
moving
you
into that strategic
are.
impact leader, right? I was a phenomenal manager, phenomenal, right? So I should definitely be able to,
Yeah.
right? But that's like you said, it's so different. And then even moving to that executive. So just out of curiosity, Laura, just what's going through my head right now is, what are some of the results that you've seen from
Mhm.
this now that you have designed that? And I love the mentorship component too. That's
Yeah.
phenomenal as well. But what are some of the results you've seen?
Well, certainly, we have certain measurements. One is just the level of bench strength that we have.
Yeah.
And, we are um, a very old company, a very successful old company that's still family owned. And so
Yes.
we have a lot of tenure, which is great. But with that, we have waves of retirement. And, and we've seen more retirement, over the past several years and will continue. And so we want to make sure we're developing that bench strength and how deep are we going and what does that look like? Are they ready now or in 12 to 24 months or is it longer? So that's one thing is really being able to feel more comfortable about the bench strength. The next is thinking about providing these competencies that we believe are going to make a very effective leader here in our organization, and they're very cross transformational too, or transferable skills too, absolutely. But we're honing in on those most critical things because, like I said, we use different competencies all day long, but for us to help their success, we feel if we really concentrate on these, we're setting them up better for success. So we look at their readiness to take that role once they're
Yeah.
in role. But what's that look like? What's the feedback from there? Certainly retention. Are we retaining those that we want to retain?
Yeah.
Are we retaining our high potential talent as we've identified it and making sure we don't have regrettable turnover? And then just the overall engagement, not only of those leaders that are involved in the program, but just those that they are leading. What's their, how engaged are they? What are they saying about their leader?
Yeah.
And we do different types of surveys and feedback and 360, so we're getting that type of feedback. So those are really some of the critical, things that we're looking for and we're
Yeah.
measuring in the program.
Yeah. I love it. Absolutely love it. Love it. In that you mentioned a word that I really want to come back to, and that was retention. And one of the things that we're seeing as a potential leadership challenge slash opportunity right now is how does one or an organization recruit and retain across different generations? We're seeing and hearing the generation conversation more and more. And I love what you just mentioned about, being a family owned company and having tenure. And so my imagination is that you probably are working with multiple generations, as you mentioned, the waves of retirement and all those things. So any insight that you can share with folks on how are you working with multiple generations in the recruitment phase and in the retention phase and the development phase, any and all of that.
Yeah. So certainly, in our business, we have our distribution business, but we also own 141 retail stores too. And so, very frontline talent that we're looking for, and for the most part, we have really, I can say, especially on our retail side, we have four generations in the workplace. We have some people that are 75, 76 because they want to do something part-time and they love doing it, but at least three generations in the workplace.
Wow.
And so, that in itself has challenges, but when you're thinking about recruiting, where are we going to recruit people and where are we meeting them? Because when we recruit through only technology or things like that, we might be missing some other generation. Or if we only do it old school ways or things like that, we're not getting the younger talent that's coming in. So I think from a recruiting standpoint is making sure you have multiple recruiting channels and you're able to get out into your communities and really being seen by different generations as a good place to work that's providing the things that they're looking for.
Yeah.
When you think about retention, I think it really goes to what are you offering in the workplace, because it does vary. Somebody that's later in their career is looking for different benefits, different for different things than somebody that's younger in their career. So we've done a lot of work on thinking about what is it that we have to offer, and it's become much more broader than it's ever been. For example, the traditional 401k. We've offered it, it has a great match. But what we were hearing from the younger generation, hey, look, I've got school loans to pay back, or things like that.
Yeah.
And so how have we taken our match and said, we'll put it towards school loans and not right now towards our employer match of 401k. And
Wow.
so, and so those are the type of things you have to think differently, where we wouldn't never, you can't say never, but we wouldn't want to take away the 401k. I mean, that's a good benefit, and things, even if you're young, to still contribute and things like that. But when you're having part of your population say, hey, for the next 3 years, could you contribute to this to help this? And then, yeah, I'll still contribute to my 401k, but my employer match, could it go to do this for the next 3 years? And then after that, go to my 401k. And so, it's really it's meeting your employees where they are. And when you talk about generational differences, they're very different, as
Yeah.
we all know. The next is preparing your leadership to manage the different generations. And that's part of our Lead to Succeed journey. We talk about generational challenges, opportunities, ways that they might want to be communicated to, or others, that type of thing. So, it's supporting, just not thinking your leaders automatically know how, they have a 55-year-old and a 22-year-old, and it's just the same, because it's
Yeah.
not, and so, making sure you recognize it and then giving them some tools to do that, I think is really important too. So
Wow. Lord, I mean, there's so much in there that I want to come back to and unpack. I've never heard of an organization doing a match for student loan repayment. That is so innovative. I hope other people who are listening are thinking like, wow, I've never heard of that before. So is that how long have you all been doing that?
just for about a year now.
Yeah. Wow. And I could definitely see how appealing that could be to the younger generation, especially with, all the things about will student loan forgiveness and be there, not there, and all those things. And again, we know that the cost of education is continuing to rise. Wow. I just
Absolutely.
never heard of that. And I remember my first job being so frustrated because they did a 401k match. And I thought that that was okay, that's great. But at 23, it was not what I was most interested in at the time. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you talk about something else that I don't think we have an answer for yet, but a lot of younger people are on their parents' health insurance,
Yeah.
right? Which is fine. But so for us, I think, compared to the market, I think we offer very good health and welfare benefits. But if I'm on my parents' benefits, I don't really care.
Right.
So how do we offset that?
Yeah.
What else are they interested in? And it might not be monetary. I mean, one of the things we're looking for is more of a workforce that can, shift swap very easily without, getting the manager involved. It's,
Yeah.
I know gig workforce is kind of an old term now, but just making it easy for them to the things that's important for them, or hey, can somebody switch this shift for this shift, as long as
Yeah.
they're in the same area or something like that. And we're just now having technology that's going to start doing that. But so there again, you have to think about what we think, and we can go and advertise. We have great, medical, dental, and vision benefits and voluntary benefits. But you know what? You're 18, 20, and 22, I'm not sure that's that appealing to you, where
Right.
something else might be, you know.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Like again, I love the innovative way that you all are thinking about this, and it's given me so many different ideas and things that I'm excited to be able to share with people because, yeah. And again, as you're talking about this, I'm 46 now, but I can think back to when I was 22 and 23, and those were the same questions that were going through my mind was, eh, I mean, I'm healthy enough right now and I'm on my parents' health benefits or whatever, right? And gosh, I really, yeah, I hear that 401k match is going to be very important later on in life, but you know, so I love it. I love that. And I can see why, again, you all are having the success that you're having with that recruitment and retention of multiple generations. And I love also what you mentioned about meeting generations where they are and not falling into this idea of this is the quote unquote best way to recruit because you're going to find multiple ways to reach different generations, different people where they are, whether that's word of mouth, whether that's technology, whether that's, paper bulletins, whatever that may be. And I love that because I do think that people are feeling this pressure to move to a single solution on things.
Yeah,
And I just don't know that again
yeah,
with
well,
the diversity of these generations that we're going to find a single solution. So yeah, I
if
love that,
somebody has
Laura.
a single solution and they think it's great, let me know, please. We haven't found it yet.
Well, Laura, unfortunately, my goodness, we are already coming up on time, and wow, I just could. There's so many other questions that I want to ask you, but maybe we'll, hopefully, if you would be willing to come back, we'll do another episode because, again, just really appreciate all the insights that
Yeah,
you've
it's
shared.
been great. I
In
appreciate it.
closing, what I would love to ask is if there's one thing that you would say to your younger self about leadership, what would that be?
One is to take every opportunity you can, even if you don't think you're ready for it, and be open to learn from other people and find a great mentor.
Mhm. That actually plays right into my second question. You hit it. It's amazing the synergy on that. I was going to ask you as we close out, how important have mentors been in your journey, your leadership journey?
Yeah, extremely important. You
Yeah.
know, I think it probably started with my grandmother, and then just went on from there. And I've had a lot of great mentors and people that, maybe I was doubting a lot of stuff, and they were saying, "No, let's do it." And you know, they haven't steered me wrong. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I just I'm a firm believer. That's why again, you mentioned several things today that I mean, everything that you mentioned, but when you mentioned mentoring earlier about being that being a part of that lead to succeed, it just again resonated so much with me. I just believe that mentorship is so important and such a great asset, And so I like to always ask people about what role mentorship has played in their life. I know it's helped me tremendously. And
absolutely. And
yeah.
it's something when we talk about mentoring and in our program to the mentors, we also talk about reverse mentoring, that they will learn probably as much as their mentee. And that's so important, because sometimes you think, well, I'm just mentoring, but no, that reverse mentoring is real, and you learn just as much from mentoring others.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And I think that is a great way to tie this all in because what you started off with at the very beginning is that recognition that leadership is a continuous journey
Mhm.
and it's not this place of arrival. And I think if people hold that mindset, like you said, that reverse mentoring does happen, right? Because there's so much that we can learn unless we fall into that mindset that we know all that there is to know. So love
Yeah.
that. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time, folks. You can find Laura on LinkedIn and please connect. Again, you heard a lot of the wisdom, a lot of the insights. She and her organization are doing tremendously great work. And one of the things that you heard here, and I know you also heard this at the beginning of the kickoff of the show, but not only has Laura been doing this work in such an effective way, but I think it's also really unique again family owned business, making tremendous strides, being very, very productive, but also listening to the generations and making some things that I've never even considered before, some thoughts and ideas I've never considered before. So, Laura, once again, thank you for all that you do, all that you're bringing to this space, and thank you for being a guest today.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.